While the speakers come to the front, I think if you have a question, it would also help for you to write it down so that it is clear enough. But we'll give people an opportunity to, with a microphone, to ask. So either way will work. All right. Thank you very much. My name is Stephen Wanyonyi, and I'm the chaplain at the University of Southern Queensland, just across here. I'm also a member of the Toowoomba Interfaith Working Group, and I've enjoyed working under Bishop for quite a while. Now we are going to have an opportunity to extract wisdom from this great man. You will agree. Actually, before we go on, can we give another round of applause, please? I don't know about you, but I feel very inspired this morning. Thank you, Bishop, for sharing a very, very personal and deep story. I can't imagine how it would have been, but you shared it with so much grace, yet like usual. Kind of you make us absorb the shock. Yeah. And thanks a lot to Scott for giving us insight into, what our rights might be. It's a wonderful thing that we have an opportunity now to ask Scott some questions about, because there are questions about our rights and how they're being trampled upon. But it looks like the picture is way, way better than we think. And Dr. Flynn, it was really refreshing to hear an expert in public health asking these questions. I've worked a lot with mRNA before, and I know how much care needs to be given to it for it to work. So I've been asking, how do these vaccines get into those remote places? Thanks a lot for that. Okay, I'll ask a question before I give everybody a chance. There'll be somebody walking around with a microphone. So if you have a question, please make it succinct, precise. It is not another lecture, it is a question. So make it very, very clear so that it is easy for somebody to answer. We only have 20 minutes to extract that information. My first question goes to Bishop. Now, it is an opinion that people fear death, not because it is painful, but because of the uncertainty of what lies ahead. I would like you to provide commentary on that from a faith point of view. Well, 1 minute commentary. Thanks, Bishop.
Thank you, Stephen. Do you know how much I love you as a brother?
Thanks a lot.
I think it ties in, with the hope piece that I offered at the end, faith, hope and love. Inevitably, different faiths have different understandings of what happens after we die. There are some who believe that actually we will cease to be, and that's okay. That there's somehow this physical life we have, we just get one go at it and we're going to give it our best shot. There are some others who believe that that's true of the physical body, but that we will somehow, the spirit will continue and find life in another form in terms of reincarnation. And there are others who would believe that after death there will be a future time in which a new life will be there, a resurrected life will be there. So I don't think there is only one understanding in the room about what happens after we die. And even, it would be an interesting focus for a conference, really. But some years ago, we had an opportunity for faith leaders organised by the Toowoomba Faith Working Group to meet together with pastoral carers in the hospital. And a lovely one of the venerables from Pure Land was there as the Buddhist expert witness. And the question was really, what do we do with people who are dying? And she said,
in the Buddhist tradition, the first thing you should not do is touch, because in our understanding, it is important not to distract the person from dying, that they should not be distracted, but make that transition. So for all the Christian pastoral carers in the room, there was this collective, because in our understanding, touch is really important. There's this sense of we want people to be physically reminded of human companionship as people move from physical life to the next life in that kind of way. So I think that within the room there are different understandings of what happens next and different understandings of how we rightly accompany people from this life to whatever happens next. So I'm definitely not going to push one above the other. I think that's one of the things that we need to have respect for. And I think our role is to encourage, and I was just having this conversation with someone in the break, somehow encourage each other to live the best life in this life now, and the common values of compassion and love and respect to come out. But for Buddhist friends, my hope is that they can encourage me to be the best Christian I can be, and I can encourage them to be the best Buddhist or Sikh or Muslim in that kind of way. So I think in the room, many different understandings of what happens after death. It's lovely to see Sue here, who's a pastoral care at the hospice, the Toowoomba Hospice, exercises an extraordinary ministry with those who are dying. What happens next? There's great variety of understandings in the room. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. And if we can hand the microphone to Scott, please. Because Scott gets the next question. I get the privilege because I'm standing here. Sorry. Now, to Scott, what do you think about the opinion that the religious discrimination bill is a pushback against the cancel culture? So, what do you think about the opinion that the religious discrimination bill is a pushback against the cancel culture?
Well, that's a good question. And obviously you can tell these are questions that have not been fed to us earlier. Look, the whole cancel culture thing is something that I struggle with, the use of labels, and there's a lot of people now using the word woke. I really don't like that description. It's not something that I would ever use. I always struggled with political correctness before that, and a lot of people have been assigning those labels, and as a human rights commissioner, it really concerns me that some people think that human rights are part of some cancel culture, woke, politically correct agenda. It could be nothing further from the truth than that. And in fact, if you go back to the very origins of modern human rights, it really it started as concerns after World War II about suppressing fascism and resisting fascism. Had absolutely nothing to do with political correctness or wokeness or cancel culture. Having said all of that, I do think that in terms of, and this may or may not be getting to the point of the question, the issue of the intolerance that we're seeing in the polarisation of debate in the community now, that is something that really troubles me, and people are being pushed to the extremes, and they're being encouraged to go in one direction or the other and not have a space in between for reasonable, respectful discussion and dialogue. And to the extent that when people talk about cancel culture, they're talking about not being able to participate in that discussion, then I do actually have a lot of sympathy and concern, and share those concerns, because we do need to be consistently, continuously contesting ideas. That's how communities function, and we need to be able to do that safely. And that's where I actually think that a human rights grounding for that discussion and teaching children about human rights and about how to approach debate and discussions respectfully is actually really important. So and I'm turning this into a really selfish plug for human rights and the Human Rights Act, but in the Human Rights Act, basically and I referred to this briefly in my talk, the human rights analysis sets up this basically a decision-making framework. So you can attack any sort of conundrum by looking at it through this framework and this prism. And it's looking at the limitation on the right and then working out whether that limitation can be justified. So is it reasonable? Is it necessary? Are there other ways of achieving it? So when I say that I'd like to teach children that, I literally mean I do in fact teach my children that. So when they're arguing about the TV remote, I say to my son, look, was there another way you could have achieved the outcome of getting the TV show that you want to watch without snatching that off your sister in an act of what I would consider violence? And it's at that point my kids say, Jesus, we're glad that we've got a Human Rights Commissioner as a father. But it's true that basic way of respectful communication, dialogue, problem solving, dispute resolution would all be so much better if we could teach our children those fundamental respectful principles. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Scott. All right, so that I don't hog the time, I pass it to the floor now.
This is a personal question in a way. Over the last couple of years, my wife's found that she's much more tired. She's lost her sense of taste. And we went to the doctor, and she has a tumor. And she's will go blind unless she has an operation. And I have a great fear at the moment. We've been married 59 years, so I'm kind of used to her. We're kind of used to each other by now. But I have a great fear that people who don't get vaccinated are going to clog up the health system, and she won't be able to have an operation. And the question from that is, don't I have the duty to get vaccinated out of concern for other people, not only concern for myself?
Is that addressed to any of the speakers or? Okay. It is open.
Thank you. It has a medical flavour, so I might take this one first. Short answer, yes. So when we talk about, from my perspective, both as a doctor but as a public health doctor, vaccination is a very good thing. It's our greatest success in public health, in my perspective, in my opinion. And a vaccine confers two benefits. One is a personal benefit to me, which will prevent me from getting severely unwell from whatever disease we're vaccinating against. But that second benefit is a benefit to the community, because it will reduce the burden of whatever the pathogen is that I will carry. So it makes me less likely to pass that on to others. But also, as you alluded to, it reduces the burden that I might place on the health system. Now, we've seen different ways of trying to approach this problem, from suggestions that those that aren't vaccinated be excluded from the public healthcare system. Those suggestions being turned into policy. I understand Singapore is doing that. You won't be treated in a public hospital if you are unvaccinated against COVID-19. Now, they're big decisions, and certainly there are pros and cons for both of those. But yes, I agree with you. I believe there is a duty on me to protect myself and to protect others, and to protect the health system, because We know our health system is under strain, and it has been under strain for many, many years before COVID came. And now we're asking this surge capacity on our health system, which is already operating beyond capacity on any given day. So, yes, and I hope your wife turns out okay.
Just really quickly from a human rights perspective, one of the justifications for all the limitations on our rights is the duty on governments to protect life. So that obligation on the government is basically the fundamental basis that justifies all the restrictions that we've experienced during COVID. And a big factor has been what is going to be the impact on our public health system when the borders open. And it's not just the impact of people presenting with COVID, it's the impact on all the other health services and requirements that people have in order to maintain their health. So one of the criticisms of human rights is that it often focuses, and I was just talking to David from the Social Justice Commission about this issue just a moment ago, that it focuses on the rights of individuals versus responsibilities to the collective. And I think with this whole pandemic, it's just been a classic case of individual versus collective rights. And I think Cam was a bit shocked when I referred to Jackie Lemmy, but I think Jackie Lemmy very powerfully discussed that in Parliament and brought that really to the attention of the Australian public. We're talking about collective rights.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
No, I think these guys have covered some really important ground. The only thing I'd want to add on, from a Jewish and Christian framework, there would be the piece about loving neighbour. So it's not just about loving self, it's about loving neighbour. And more widely in our faith communities, we understand the golden rule that we treat others the way we would want ourselves to be treated, or we do not treat others. So we would not want to infect others. And I think the health advice suggests that vaccination is one way to protect others in the way that we would want to be protected. So I think there's some clear faith from sacred writing that informs that as well.
Hello, my name is Sam. I'll go first, and I got a question for Dr. Lee regarding on the corona vaccine. So I just got a question for the Pfizer vaccine, and because I know that vaccines are developed from taking the spike from corona virus to take out the RNA, and they would use that to somehow basically tells the human body that how to defend corona and how to prevent it from entering the immune system. So I just want to know that since when corona originally started till the present day that everyone's getting vaccinated right now, the virus might have mutated many times. So I just really want to know that what is the efficiency for the vaccine currently that everyone's getting injected with?
Sure. Nice, easy one. Thanks. So, a bit of background. When we become infected with a virus, the virus gets itself into our cells and co-opts our cells to do what it wants us to do. So the virus and the RNA that makes up the virus, the genetic material, will co-opt part of our cellular machinery to start pumping out more virus. And so with these mRNA vaccines, so Pfizer and Moderna, we've worked out the genome of the virus, we've worked out the bit of the RNA that encodes for the spike protein, and we are carrying that bit into the cells via a vaccine. So it's the same thing that would happen with natural infection. And then that part of the RNA, that messenger RNA, the mRNA, will then get our cells making the spike protein, so our antibodies recognise that, so we will have antibodies to face the virus. Now you're quite right, that was developed off the ancestral virus, so the original Wuhan strain of SARS-CoV-2. And there have been mutations. We had Alpha, formerly the British variant, and then we've had Delta, which everyone is rudely aware of. And now we're hearing about Mu, this new variant. It's in South Africa at the moment, that has further mutations. And these mutations may affect the spike protein. That's true. Now, we're lucky, because we've been very lucky throughout this pandemic, but when the mRNA vaccines were undergoing their phase 3 trials in different parts of the world, Delta was already apparent. And so we saw the effectiveness of these vaccines against Delta. And it's true that they're probably more effective against the Wuhan variant than against Delta, but they're still very effective against Delta. But your question, though, about what happens if mutations occur and they become less good relates back to my final slide. We are not covered unless we're all covered. Because the longer people are partially vaccinated, or particularly those with a compromised immune system are unvaccinated, the more chance there is of variants developing that become resistant to the vaccines that we have currently. Now, the good news is that scientists like doing science, and we should be thankful for that. So we do have a few vaccines which work, but that doesn't mean that we've given up the game and gone, right, let's tackle the next problem. There are still many vaccines against COVID in development at the moment, and vaccines that are targeting different parts of the virus, so not just the spike protein. So that the spike protein can mutate as much as it wants, but if the vaccine will target other parts of the virus, that won't be affected. So, for now, get vaccinated. It's the best protection we have, and it will minimise the risk of you developing severe disease, ending up in hospital, or dying from COVID.
Any question?
I don't want to be picking on the good doctors, so I'll make this a little bit more general. As someone who's got both AstraZeneca vaccination, I have been following the ethics of those who are against getting vaccines, and I've been doing this since it first came out. I did notice there was some discussion about stem cell research being used in the vaccines until some of the faith-based leaders came up and said, okay, yes, I know this is going to be distressing. We are using embryos to do research, but the importance is that we need to do it. But then I didn't hear any more discussion after that. I mean, the Pope got involved, some of the other Muslim leaders got involved in saying, yes, we still need to be vaccinated. It was just interesting not to hear any more discussion about the use of stem cell research. And another one I picked up very, very recently was someone suggesting, someone who was vegan, who had decided to get vaccinated despite the fact that, I don't know which vaccine she took, recognising that there are all the different ones, but it had gelatin in it as part of the transport. How does folks who the need to get vaccinated still have to do with those ethics about the vegan lifestyle and the ethics with that, although not wanting to use stem cell research in their producing a vaccine? So I'm throwing it over to the three of you. That's just an observation I've just noticed.
Yes, no worries. Conscious of time, I think we could, much as the Bishop alluded to before, we could have a conference on your questions. The Charlotte Lazare Institute in the United States has a very thorough document which talks about the use of stem cells or human embryonic tissue in the manufacture of a host of different vaccines. The ones that we're using in Australia, we're not, to clarify, are not using stem cells, but rather are using cells that are in constant lineage that have been used in science for some 50 years. And those cells did, I understand, come initially from an aborted fetus, but it is not as though further embryos are being destroyed in order to garner cells. This is an ongoing self-propagating cell line, which I would argue, regardless of the ethics of the original deed, are there. And I think that's my understanding of the Pope and other leaders' position, was that this cell line is here, and weighing up from a utilitarian basis the good versus bad of saving lives from the use of these cells which already exist, that's the way to go. noting too that I'll leave the vegan question aside because I think living a vegan lifestyle would involve many ethical choices every day that would be tremendously difficult to handle. The mRNA vaccines are elegant in their simplicity. I don't believe they contain gelatin. It's a bit of mRNA wrapped in a lipid layer to protect it because it's so fragile, and then frozen very cold indeed. So there's very little processing and preservatives in there because it's that negative 80 degrees which preserves that virus, that fragment of virus. Thanks.
Thanks, Liam. Now, I think, yes, thank you for that. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I understand that we all have questions, but these gentlemen are still around. I think we can continue extracting a bit more wisdom after this. Can we finish by giving them a round of applause? Thanks for the support.